I wasn't invited to my daughter's wedding, she said. It's just too embarrassing with your walker. I watched from a distance until a stranger sat beside me and said, Didn't you used to sing? I whispered the first verse I ever wrote. What happened when that video went online? I never thought my own daughter would be embarrassed by me. My name is Walter, 68 years old, living in a small town outside of Nashville, Tennessee. I'm not rich, not famous, but I worked hard my whole life. I raised my daughter, Jessica, alone after my wife Marlene passed from cancer when Jessica was just 10. I was a mechanic for over 30 years, built a life out of grease and grit. I sang in bars sometimes when I was younger, just small gigs here and there. Nothing fancy. My voice wasn't much, but it meant something to me. I thought Jessica understood that. I thought she appreciated the sacrifices I made. But I was wrong. About 6 months ago, Jessica called to tell me she was getting married. I was over the moon. She was my only child, and I had been waiting for the day I could walk her down the aisle. But then came the gut punch. She said, Dad, I think it might be best if you don't come to the wedding. I remember sitting there, gripping the phone, trying to process what she just said. Why, Jess? Why wouldn't I come to your wedding? There was a long pause. Then she said, It's just, with your walker it's hard. The venue has stairs, and I don't want you struggling. And honestly, it's kind of embarrassing. I want the day to be perfect. I sat there in silence, my heart pounding in my chest. Embarrassing. That word stuck in my mind, echoing over and over. I felt like she had just thrown 30 years of hard work and love in my face. All the nights I stayed up helping her with school projects, all the money I scraped together so she could go to college, all the times I skipped meals so she could have enough. And now, I wasn't good enough for her special day because I needed a walker. I told her I understood, even though I didn't. I hung up and sat in the dark for a long time, feeling like a fool. But on the day of her wedding, I couldn't just sit at home. I had to see her, even if from a distance. I got in my old truck and drove to the venue, an outdoor winery just outside town. I parked across the street, far enough away that no one would see me, but close enough that I could catch glimpses of her in her white dress. It hurt, seeing her smile like nothing was missing, like I wasn't missing. I sat there with my walker in the passenger seat, feeling small and forgotten. That's when a man, maybe in his late 70s, walked over. He had a weathered face, a baseball cap pulled low, and a calm, steady presence. He looked at me for a second, then said, Didn't you used to sing at the Blue Note back in the day? I blinked, surprised. Yeah. That was a long time ago. He nodded, a half smile on his lips. You had a hell of a voice. Do you still sing? I shook my head. Nah. Not for a long time. Come on, man. Just one verse. For old time's sake. I hesitated, then, with a deep breath, I softly sang the first verse of a song I wrote for Jessica when she was little. Little star, shining bright, guide my girl through the night. Though I'm old and can't stand tall, my love for you will never fall. I didn't even notice a younger woman nearby recording it on her phone. I just sang, my voice cracked and shaky, but honest. A couple of days later, the video went viral. I didn't even know what was happening until my niece called me, crying, Uncle Walt, you're all over the internet. Jessica saw the video too. I know she did, because she texted me late one night. Dad, I saw the video. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I stared at that message for a long time. I didn't answer her. Not right away. I didn't know what to say. But then things got messy. The video wasn't just a sweet little clip, it got attention. Local news picked it up. Then some national outlets. People wanted to know who the old man was, why he was singing that song. I started getting calls from reporters. I ignored most of them. Jessica started getting attention too. Her social media exploded, people praising her dad and wondering why I wasn't at the wedding. Some even criticized her for leaving me out. That's when she called me again, voice shaky, almost angry. Dad, this is spiraling. Mark's getting upset. His family is mad that I didn't invite you. It's becoming a mess. Mark. Her husband. I'd never even met the guy. I kept my voice calm. I didn't ask for any of this, Jess. I was just sitting there, minding my business. Someone else filmed it. I know. She trailed off, like she didn't know what to say. That's when I realized this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Mark's family? They were the kind who cared about appearances, about what the neighbors thought, about who drove the nicest car or lived in the biggest house. Jessica had been trying to fit into their world, and I didn't fit that image. And now, I was a problem. But I wasn't going to disappear quietly. Not this time. After that call, I didn't hear from Jessica for a few days. It was like she went silent, like she was hoping the noise would just die down and I'd fade into the background again, like I had for most of her adult life. But I wasn't fading. The video kept spreading. A few local stations ran follow-up stories, and it started picking up steam in some bigger outlets. There were hashtags about the singing dad, and people were sharing the video with captions like, "This is love." Strangers were reaching out to me, some just to say thank you, others sharing their own stories of being pushed aside by family. It was overwhelming, but part of me felt seen for the first time in years. Then came the twist. I was sitting at home, half watching the news when a segment came on about Jessica's husband, Mark. It wasn't about the wedding. It was about his company, some tech startup in California. Apparently, after the video went viral, reporters started digging into who I was and who Jessica was, and from there, into Mark's business. Someone leaked internal emails, Mark talking about how the video was an embarrassment. How I was some washed-up old man who couldn't keep his family together. And how it was a PR nightmare for the family image. It didn't stop there. A former employee came forward, saying Mark had been cooking the books at his company, inflating numbers for investors, making big promises he couldn't keep. The fallout was brutal. His investors pulled out. His company's stock crashed. Lawsuits started flying. Jessica called me late at night, crying. She sounded panicked. "Dad, everything's falling apart. Mark's blaming you. He says this all started because of you, the video, the attention, it's all spiraling." I listened, quiet for a second. Then I said, "Jess, you didn't invite me to your wedding because you thought I was embarrassing." "But it wasn't me who embarrassed you. It was Mark." She didn't say anything. Just sniffled on the other end of the line. That same week, Jessica showed up at my front door. No call. No warning. She looked exhausted, like the weight of the world was on her shoulders. She sat at my kitchen table, silent for a long time, just staring at her hands. Then she said, "Dad, I didn't know how bad it was with Mark. I thought I had to keep up this image, be the perfect couple, fit into his world. I didn't think it mattered if I left you out." I let her talk. I didn't say much. There was a part of me that wanted to yell, to tell her how much it had hurt, but I held it in. She needed to sit with it. And then, like clockwork, Mark called. She let it ring, but I could see his name flashing across her phone screen over and over. He was relentless. I told her, "You need to figure out what you want. Not what Mark wants. Not what the world thinks. What you want. But I'm not going to let you drag me into his mess." She nodded. But I could tell it wasn't over. Not yet. The next day, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Mark's lawyer. A cease and desist. They wanted me to stop talking about the video, stop mentioning Jessica, stop singing the song. They said it was infringing on Mark's brand. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just family drama. This was war. When I read that letter from Mark's lawyer, I felt my hands shaking, but it wasn't from fear. It was rage. The nerve of this man, telling me, a father, that I couldn't sing the song I wrote for my little girl. That I couldn't tell my story. That I couldn't exist without permission from him and his fancy lawyers. I sat down at my kitchen table and stared at that paper for a long time. It wasn't just some legal threat. It was Mark trying to shut me up, trying to erase me like I was an embarrassment he could sweep under the rug. And I wasn't going to let that happen. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't make a statement. I just kept singing. A week later, a local community center asked me to come in and sing at their senior night. Nothing fancy, just a small gathering of folks who'd seen the video and wanted to hear the song in person. I said yes. I showed up with my walker, my voice, and the story behind the song. Someone filmed it. And that video? It blew up bigger than the first one. It spread like wildfire across social media, on news sites, even on a couple of talk shows. People connected with it because it wasn't just a song, it was about family. About love. About being forgotten and fighting your way back into the light. That's when the media really dug in. They started asking questions about Mark. About why Jessica's father hadn't been invited to the wedding. About the emails. About the cease and desist letter. It all started to unravel. Jessica came over again, looking more worn down than ever. She sat on my couch, rubbing her hands together like she was trying to wash something off her skin. Finally, she blurted out, "Dad, Mark told me he was going to sue you if you kept singing the song. He said it's bad for his brand. He said if I didn't back him up, he'd leak things about me, private things, things I told him in confidence. He said he'd ruin me." I stared at her, not even surprised anymore. Mark wasn't just a control freak. He was a manipulator, a liar, a man willing to destroy anyone who threatened his perfect little image. Then she dropped the real bomb. "Dad, I think Mark cheated on me. With his assistant. I found messages, photos. But he said if I tell anyone, he'll drag you into court and make your life hell." I felt the blood drain from my face. I sat back in my chair, staring at her like I didn't even know who she was anymore. My daughter. The little girl I raised. The woman who was now trapped in this mess with a man who was blackmailing her with threats and lies. And she was still trying to protect him. I told her straight. "Jess, you need to wake up. Mark doesn't love you. He loves control. He's using you to cover his tracks, and you're letting him. You're scared of the fallout, but you need to think about what happens when you keep living like this. Do you want to spend the rest of your life walking on eggshells for a man who would sell you out in a second if it helped him look good?" She sat there in tears, nodding. But I could see she wasn't ready to make the break. A few days later, the story hit the national news. Mark's emails, the cheating allegations, the legal threats against me, all of it. It was everywhere. And the thing is, I didn't leak it. Jessica did. She told me later that night, sitting on my porch. She said, "I sent the emails to a journalist. I couldn't let him keep controlling everything. I'm sorry, Dad. I should have stood up for you sooner." I looked at her, my heart breaking and mending at the same time. I told her, "Jess, you did what you had to do. But this is just the beginning." Because Mark wasn't going to go down quietly. And neither was I. After Jessica leaked the emails, everything started to crumble fast. Mark's company tanked, investors pulled out, the board voted to remove him as CEO, and lawsuits started rolling in from former clients and employees. The media tore into him, not just for the fraud, but for the leaked emails showing him mocking me and calling Jessica a weak, emotional liability. It was ugly. And it wasn't just his business going up in flames, his personal life was a mess too. The assistant he'd been cheating with? She went public with the affair, sold her story to a tabloid, and confirmed that Mark had been manipulating and gaslighting Jessica for years. Jessica was humiliated, but she also felt free for the first time in a long time. She called me one night, sobbing. "Dad, I feel like such an idiot. I let him convince me you were the problem, I let him convince me I was the problem. I told her the truth. Jess, we all make mistakes. But it's what you do next that matters. And that's when we started planning. Not just to clean up the mess Mark left behind, but to fight back. Jessica filed for divorce immediately. But Mark wasn't going to make it easy. He tried to drag it out, delay proceedings, and smear her name in court filings. That's when I stepped in. I hired a lawyer. A good one. A local guy named Sam who had a reputation for being a bulldog in court. Sam didn't just help Jessica with the divorce. He went after Mark for defamation and emotional distress, using the emails and text messages as evidence. We also filed a counterclaim against the cease and desist letter, arguing it was a baseless attempt to silence me. The court battle lasted months. It was brutal. Mark tried everything, accusing me of exploiting Jessica for fame, saying I was only singing to make money off the viral video. He even tried to get a restraining order against me, claiming I was harassing him. It didn't work. Jessica testified in court, under oath, about the manipulation, the threats, the cheating, the lies. The emails and texts spoke for themselves. The judge wasn't impressed with Mark's behavior. In the end, Jessica was granted full divorce terms in her favor: house, assets, everything. Mark was ordered to pay legal fees, alimony, and damages for defamation. But that wasn't the worst of it for him. After the trial, the IRS got involved. Turns out, once the media started digging into his company, they found some accounting irregularities Mark had been hiding for years. Fraud. Tax evasion. He was arrested, charged, and eventually sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. As for me, the song, the lullaby I wrote for Jessica, got picked up by a record label. They asked me to record it in a studio, professionally, for a charity album about family and forgiveness. All proceeds went to organizations helping estranged families reconnect. It wasn't about the money for me. I didn't make a dime. But seeing the song help others felt like real justice. Jessica and I? We rebuilt our relationship. It wasn't perfect. We had a lot of hard talks, a lot of tears, but we did the work. She moved back home for a while, helped me fix up the house. We started doing little performances together at local community events. I still think about what happened. About the way Mark tried to erase me. About the way Jessica almost let him. But here's the thing, when someone tries to bury you, they don't realize you're a seed. Mark tried to destroy us, and in the end, he destroyed himself. Jessica learned a hard lesson about loyalty and love. I learned that sometimes, the best revenge is living your truth so loudly that no one can silence you. And me? I got my voice back. I still sing that lullaby sometimes. Not because I need to, but because I can.